June 28th, 2016, at 6 o'clock. If we can rise for the invocation. And Mr. Arjona, can you lead us in an invocation?
Dear Lord, thank you for all the blessings. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today and always.
Amen. Let us face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Y'all may be seated. Under public comments, we have Rick Ramirez, if you can come forward, please. Police, Municipal Court, and City Manager. Mr. Arjona.
Yes, Mayor, good evening, Commissioners. We have the departmental reports, as you mentioned, Mayor. I've got different departments here. If there's any questions?
Okay.
If not, I can proceed with my,
I do have some questions. On the, I saw the budget calendar before us, Mr. Garza, as you're working through the budget. Will you be talking about that tonight to, for adoption, or we just go by this? Does any of this have to have any type of action from the commission?
no, actually, Mayor, Commissioners, this is just a tentative calendar for the budget process. This is pretty much for the information. As far as what we need to adopt, it'll be on the first, not necessarily the adopt, but the next workshop that we would like to have on July the 20th to discuss the first recommended, city manager recommended budget. But this is more like a timeline as to the budget process.
We have submittals from the departments already, is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, we already have the first phase of the budget. We have the book, and we're starting to review it
Okay.
this week, between Wednesday and Tuesday from next week. Hopefully, we're gonna finish by then, and then start adjusting all the expenditures down in case we have to, right? And start balancing the budget for the next meeting, which is gonna be on July the 20th.
Okay.
What we'd like to do is, before coming before you, have a balanced budget as to what is being requested by the department heads. And then we'll start doing, as you always, either whether it's taking or adding, and then we'll go back to readjust the budget.
I think one of the things that I've spoken in the past with you, and I know you, Mr. Garza, and at times probably up here as well, I like to revisit back in 2005, 6, and 7, we did a study, might have been 2007, and as we went into a pay grade. And that was able to give us a guidance as the government does the different levels, so that as the entry levels begin, we would have an entry level that would, as we adjusted that, be it costs of living that we would give and that would get adjusted, everything was adjusted just as well. And I know there's an existing, we approved it, we adopted it, and I think we've pulled away from it. I'd like to go back to review that, and we can look at what we had and look at our, where we are, because one of the things that we consistently hear are folks, we have, I think it was 8.68, is that the entry minimum? 8.65 is our minimum, which is great, because we're not at 7.25. But unfortunately, some of our people who get hired at a higher level than some of the people that have been working with us for some time. And I think that goes back to contributing that we're not moving on the scale as we start doing these adjustments. So I'd like to look at that and find out what do we need to do to get back on track with that so that we have equity as we're looking at pay for our employees. And I think when we look at that, I want to look at that seriously at the beginning of the budget, because we always do wait till we look at a balanced budget and then start going into the reserve. So I like to be able to include that in everybody's department, that if we were able to adopt that, then we would also have to go back, each one of you, to your departments to take a look at that. And how would that affect you if we were to make that kind of an adjustment? So I'd like for you all to work on that as well and present that on the first budget meeting that we're having on the 20th. And first of all, it was adopted, so we can go back to our minutes and get that. And I believe we do have some kind of reference point, what that grade level used to, what that grade chart used to look like. Okay?
Mayor, are you talking about something like how the federal system has it, like a G5 and?
Right, after so many years
Years.
and after so much seniority
okay,
and after your evaluations, you were, and new people came in, you were bumped down to the next level. And so it gives you a steady idea of where you would be if you worked for us for 5 years, where you work for us for 10 years, rather than be random adjustments, you know, now this, and we did a lot of adjustments of the people that were already on the job when we got them into comparable pay based on the kind of job and the description that we did. So I think it's a good exercise to look at that. And if we can adopt it all at once, but that we start working towards that, I think that becomes equitable, because I keep hearing from some of our longtime, and you know, the ones that get the hardest are going to be the hourly. because we do those percentage adjustments are different when we look at the smaller 25 cents versus, 5% or 1%. And I do want to see what would that, and when you come back with those numbers, what does it come back as a percentage? So we have a sense of how it affects hourly and how it exempts. I think that's important. When it comes to the court, I know that I'd like to be able to, the last time you did provide a document regarding some of the collections, but I don't think we got all the information. I'd like to see also, there was an increase by means of the warrants, and I'd like to be able to see the aging of the accounts that are being collected, the ones that are still outstanding and how old they are, and the current collections in the current year, and how much are attributed to the warrant officer and how much are attributed to the collection agency. I think that's really important as we're looking at your costs and your expenses, and we're looking how efficient that's being taken care of. If you can do that, I really would appreciate that. And I don't have any other questions on any of the others. Does any other member of the commission? Go ahead, Mr. Arjona, with your
Yes.
report.
Just real quick, Mayor, Commissioners, on some of the project updates that we're currently working on. As you know, the Eldora project is already completed. Cesar Chavez is already being completed as well. These are county projects. They're currently working on the same Houston Street. That one, drainage improvements are already being completed. The next scheduled thing is to finish the recycling, the existing asphalt by the end, hopefully they'll finish by the end of this week. Next week, they'll be working in the road stabilization material to the subgrade.
Okay.
I mean, the caliche and the subgrade. So they're hoping that by the week of the 11th, they'll be doing the asphalt. So within the next couple of weeks, they should be finishing completely on that same Houston project.
So then the only project with the county that we have pending would be Sergeant Trevino?
Sergeant Trevino, that is correct.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, on that one, we're meeting with the county chief of staff, hopefully this Thursday, so we can go through some of the logistics on that.
Okay, I'd still like to have a meeting schedule, if we can do something for next Tuesday. I know we're going to have the engineer is working on the streets and evaluation of the
Right.
the level of deterioration and kind of reviewing the,
Right, and that was a study that was submitted by the UTRGV and also by the previous engineer.
Correct.
And that's what we handed over to Mr. Carlos Garza.
Okay.
So what he's currently doing, he's doing an assessment on all the streets and determining what's the level of deterioration on these streets and how much money it's gonna take to bring it back up to par. If you like, we can have Mr. Carlos Garza, he's here.
Sure, you can tell us where you're at, sir. You can come forward, please.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
For the record, Carlos Garza with AEC Engineering. Let me put it here. Big map. Mayor and Commissioners, what we've been working on is, you had a previous plan that was done a few years back, and then recently the UTRGV Civil Engineering Department did an assessment of the streets on your city. And so one of the things that we did is look at that assessment and look at it on how the methodology that they went about to assess the streets and determine if, rather than if you have a pothole in front of your house, you're going to complain about a pothole. Nobody wants a pothole in front of their house, right? But just because the street has a pothole doesn't mean that the street is a bad street or it needs to be replaced. And so, in looking at it, and I'm going to paraphrase, I brought just a 2-page little summary of what we've been able to find so far from the UTRGV study and where we're at in compiling that information. Because what I need to do is relay it out to a level in which we all can understand and relate it to the amount of money that it's going to take to fix those streets. Okay? So, establishing
You had a
great-
chance to look at that's already been produced.
Yes.
So you go back and you're reviewing it.
Well, yes, because what I wanted to do is find 3 levels of common points between them.
Priorities.
Of priorities, of what your previous study had, what UTRGV did, and then what staff on a level receives of complaints of the streets. And trying to find a common ground between all 3 of them and see if there's something in common with those. So if all 3 of them list one specific street, then we should really be looking at that street. Now, your previous study was a little bit vague in identifying a street with curb and gutter, storm drainage on it. So one of the things we're taking is also the step of identifying those streets. If they have curb and gutter, then identifying if we're gonna have to replace, for any reason, curb and gutters that.
Excuse me? No, 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 no. Shh, no.
So the UTRGV used what's called the PCI method. It's a paving condition index. And it was originally developed by the military to determine the conditions of roads in military bases. And it looks at factors like cracking, depressions on the street, edge cracking, patching of the streets, corrugation, potholes ratings as well, and what they call polished aggregate, so a very street that has a lot of oils already in it and gets very smooth. During wet conditions, it becomes slick. So even though the asphalt might look good, riding aspect of the street becomes an endangerment to the public, and especially on a high-velocity street. Okay? And then swelling of buckling, depending on some roads, and looking if the base wasn't done right and it's on a high clay content, for example. I don't mean to get all technical on this, but it has that upheaving, and so you have some roads that end up with a lot of undulations on them. And so even though the road was originally paved smooth, after heavy storm events, that road starts looking more like a roller coaster than a road. And so we identify what's called priority 1 streets and priority 2. Priority 1s are those streets that include failed and seriously failed in commercial, residential, and school zones. This PCI method gives a lot of priority to roadways that lead to and from schools because of the high volume of traffic that they receive. So we've identified 13 streets with asphalt and no curb or gutter in the street. And that's about 3.53 miles of street. Now, the problem with the study also is that it didn't identify the width of the streets. So I might have a street, but one's 20 feet, the other one's 30, the other one's a 42-foot street. So it's going back and looking at those widths of the street to relate to a length, because obviously you're gonna pay on a surface area for overlayment on that. So it's saying 3 miles, well, 3 miles of a 20-foot street, it's not the same as, 3 miles of a 42-foot wide street. We've identified 55 streets with asphalt, curb, and gutter, and that's on almost 9.9 miles. And we've focused the primary area originally of, as discussed with Mr. Arjona, is the area from on the north, on Business 83 to the north, Moore Road to the south, Stewart to the east, and Veterans to the west. So that big quadrant. Some of those high priority streets so far that we have, and this is not by all means inclusive of our findings. We're still working and analyzing that, but we got streets like Star Ruby Road, Jonathan Street, San Antonio from 7th to Sam Houston. We got Nebraska, section on Nebraska Road, Ohio, Shoford Street, King, Mayfair Street, Hampton Street, Andrew Street, Doe Street, Coyle Drive, and 13th Street in Clark Terrace subdivision. And now, on the priorities also, your previous study had some areas that called it immediate areas, those areas that needed to be attended to within 1 to 3 years, and those in a longer time frame. And then looking also on the aspect of in expected life for a brand new street with the full road construction, you're looking at 15 to 25 years under ideal conditions. In an overlay, you're looking at 8 to 15 years on a maximum on an overlay. Unfortunately, you're not the only city. A lot of other cities that I've discussed with this, they're getting 8 years maximum out of this. So the question is, why is that? And trying to identify I know recently we had San Antonio Street was redone, and some of it was overlay, other was new section, and making sure that all those streets and the paving is coming along into full compliance, and making sure that you're getting the best return for your investment of your dollar into that. And
I'm sorry to cut you off. You mentioned about 8-year lifespan on the street, pretty much. Is that with a 3-inch of asphalt, or?
that's on a typical 2-inch street with 8 inches of caliche and lime-treated subgrade material on it. Obviously, if you go to a 3-inch street, you get that much better life, but you're spending 50% more asphalt on it. And so it's that level of identifying, well, is there something specific to this road that warrants, buses, for example? If it's a road that comes from the bus barn of the school district, well, and it's getting, 200 buses in the morning leaving, coming back in the morning, leaving again in the afternoon, coming back in the evening. I mean, that's a lot of trips through that street just on the buses. You add transportation corridors, so you got some 18-wheelers. You got trash trucks and that kind of stuff. That is the heavy, vehicles that do a lot of damage to those streets. And also, one of the things that we're looking at is streets and identifying, in conjunction with the solid waste department, that continuous stopping of the solid waste trucks and that continuous jerking and stopping. Have you seen one of those trucks? I mean, they hit the air brake on it and just slams onto it. I mean, it does, it's not the fault of the solid waste department. I'm saying it's because of the aspect of the operations. It puts a lot of that continuing jerking motion onto the pavement of the road. But it's been a lot of work on getting it.
You mentioned up to Business 83. You stopped there. You're going north of Business.
Oh, yes, no, we're looking at the entire city, but the primary area right now, because of, unfortunately, there's that quadrant that I mentioned from Business 83 South, some of those streets there are in pretty bad shape in some of those areas. But yes, we are looking at the entire city.
Okay.
And actually the report, and I need to check with Javier, because I think there's a couple of subdivisions that were included in the report that are in the map that they show it outside the city limits. I have the feeling that those are probably subdivisions that have voluntarily annexed themselves into the city, so we need to update the city limit map just to indicate that they are inside the city. But those were up by Raul Longoria up that way. It was one or two subdivisions that we found that way. But I'm hoping to, continue and getting this to a point where we can actually bring you the streets and bring you the
Next week,
the list.
Tuesday?
Next week, I'll come and give you an update next week, definitely. I mean, on where we're at with the project, absolutely. I'll be here next week and giving you what else we've identified.
How long do you think it's going to be till you're finished?
I would think within a couple of weeks we'll have everything. In another couple of weeks we'll have everything done, because the next step is to put numbers to it. Okay, so I got to go back, and now once I have identified the
2
areas
weeks you'll
and
have
everything
numbers?
else, we're hoping to have numbers. Yes.
Okay, then let's shoot for 2 weeks.
Okay.
No more than that, please.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you're working on the existing projects that are already going on and identifying some of those streets that are going to be taken care of anyway because of the roads that are being torn up and put in together.
Right.
You're letting him know which ones
Right.
those are and.
Yes.
He's got a report on that.
Okay. All right.
2 weeks
2
will
weeks.
make it, let me see, what day would that be?
Any questions?
Okay.
Is that on,
I'm sorry, the 12th,
is that a Tuesday?
a Tuesday, it'll be a 12th.
And we can do it right before the meeting as a workshop.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Mr. Arjona?
Yes, just real quick on the urban county projects, the water sewer project that was initiated on the 2014, OMT was awarded the project contract. we held a pre-construction meeting on Thursday of last week. The contract was already being approved by Mr. Legal Counsel. He already saw it, so we're gonna go back and turn it back to the engineer, and we're hoping that as soon as maybe by the end of the week, they get a notice to proceed. Within 10 days, they'll start working on that project. The 2015 street improvement project, which is the along 3rd, 4th, and Iowa streets. The selection ranking for the professional engineers, material testing was approved on June 7th by the Urban County.
Okay,
Professional engineering firm approved for the contract negotiation was Mr. Perez Consulting Firm. As soon as the agreement is reached, the Urban County will present an agenda item for the contract approval. So we're just waiting on that. We're hoping that within the next couple of weeks, we'll get something with us.
Capri subdivision, when do we get those fundings?
Capri subdivision,
It's another CDBG for 2015.
that's the coconut pulling.
Yes,
Okay, that one, the funding is anticipated to be approved on July 1st.
great. So once it gets approved, what time frame are we
We're
looking at?
looking at the project is currently in the environmental phase.
Okay.
The selection will be expected to take place in the spring of 2017. So if everything goes well, no delays, the project should be expected to be completed by the fall of 2017.
And that the county is handling, correct?
That's the Urban County, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
On the New Freedom sidewalk project,
Mhm.
that one, we had a pre-construction meeting on Monday. The contract was already reviewed by Mr.
Villalobos?
Villalobos. We'll submit it tomorrow, and they're giving 45 consecutive days to completion. So if, let's say, on July 5th, that's when they're anticipating to get the notice to proceed. They'll have 10 days afterwards to start working on the project, but it doesn't mean that they'll wait 10 days. It can be a couple of days afterwards to start working on it. So after the 10 days after the 5th, they'll have 45 consecutive days to finish, permitting weather.
All right, and they've already discussed the pickup, that's already been arranged
The pickup for the,
for the folks that are riding the metro, since that's the
oh,
area
yes,
that's been
yes,
affected?
yeah. He was there at the meeting as well.
Okay, so that's going to be notified somehow for the area where they can stand to
The,
get picked up?
The drivers, according to the gentleman representing the Valley Metro,
Mhm.
they're going to be notifying the passengers.
Okay, so we'll know where to pick up
Right.
and when.
It'll be close by because of the fact that the construction is not that big of a construction. They'll be notified there. It'll be close by.
Okay, as long as that gets
Yes.
communicated and not, that's no
Right.
one's in danger and everybody knows where they need to be
Right.
to get picked up.
The Texas was there as well. They're going to be putting some barricades, whatever they need to do.
Okay.
It's going to be by the contractors, but the Texas was already, they were there as well in that meeting.
And so if we can also get that information on our website,
Okay,
if ridership actually looks at it, they can
sure.
also make notification through ours as well.
Okay,
As I'm
we'll do
sure
that.
that the Metro will do the same. Anything else, Mr. Cervantes? I'm sorry,
Arjona.
I saw his name next.
No,
Arjona.
Mayor, that's all I got.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Moving on to Section B, Item B, presentation of the police substation project. Mr. Arjona?
Yes, the last meeting, we have Mr. Matos here from PBK.
Okay.
To give us an update on the substation, the police substation. If there's any questions you may have, he's here with the new elevations, with the new figures. So if there's any questions, Mr. Matos, he'll be here to answer.
Do we have those figures in here?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that, please. Can you come forward?
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
Commissioners. This will look very similar to the presentation I did about a month ago. This is the master plan that shows the proposed building and Phase 2. Right now, we're just focusing on parking lot, stopping about the edge of the building and extending about to the other edge of the building. Site plan hasn't changed much from last time. We added additional 10 parking spaces for staff on the west side.
So that'll be behind security gates?
Well, during the last meeting on last week, there was a consensus to omit the gate for this phase.
Does? Financial?
I guess they thought it was not needed.
Chief? Can you speak to that, please?
The combination, Mayor, it was financial and,
Well, let's
Let's
hear
see.
what, the safety and the reason we talked about it the first time.
Yes, good evening, Mayor.
Good
Commissioners.
evening.
Mayor, we did speak about that, and cost, it was going to be cost-effective at this point for us. Right now, we currently don't have any any gates in our current facility.
Correct.
We haven't had any type of breach incident by the community of any sort. So we want to remain with that premise on the new substation, and we're going to include it in the second phase. Just talking about trying to find ways to be cost-effective and trying to, see we can be able, what are the areas that we can actually,
Were
we
you
can
thinking like what kind of gate were you looking at?
we're looking at an electric gate, and we also discussed about other types of gates and so forth. But in this community, Mayor, it's a very safe community based on the statistics that we're seeing. We don't see a lot of, crime.
That
in
was not a
area.
problem for you, has been in our north station?
No, we haven't had serious breach of any kind or thefts or anything that have been, that have occurred in that area at all. Not
Okay.
since I've been here, so,
Okay,
but I
and
checked.
in your professional opinion, there will be no type of safety issues for our employees based on
That is
your past
correct.
experience and the fact that we would not be having it right now? We're not
But we do have
compromising.
some other security measures. We're going to put up a lot of different cameras there. So we do have cameras, surveillance cameras going to be available and so forth.
Not only that, Chief, just, if you're not gonna have a gate there, make sure it's well lit as well, in that area.
Yes, and they do have that as well. Those were some of the that we had, that we wanted to make sure that it's well lit and stuff like that, and also available cameras and so forth. So
Right.
at this point, we're very comfortable that
Okay,
we don't need, that's a cost that we can revisit later on. But we have no indication that, because of our experience with the current location, that we need it at this
And you're
point.
gonna have plenty of traffic in and out of there.
That is
so
correct.
Out of all hours of,
Yes, that's correct. That's
so.
correct.
okay, Chief, thank you.
Going back to the lighting, site lighting, our team will perform what we call a photometric study, and by code, we are required to provide sufficient lighting, parking for the parking.
What code are you
For the
using
parking lot.
for
I be-
parking?
I believe, well, it's IBC 2012. So this is something that we do for every project.
Standard,
It's standard
national standard,
procedure.
is that what you're
Yes, ma'am.
saying?
So, site plan looks pretty much the same. We shortened the parking here. It used to extend about this much. Actually, we removed 10 parking spaces and we relocated them for staff. So the ratio is the same for parking and pavement. Floor plan, there are a few modifications. One of them is we relocated the electrical room and riser room to the corner of the building for better access. Before we had it here somewhere. The riser was here at some point, I believe, and the electrical room was here. And since we need to accommodate for future expansion, we decided it would be better to have them on the corner. So that implicated moving all the offices, push the offices up. Now the chief has a corner office, and we had to relocate the conference room here to the middle of the building. But other than that, the program is the same, square footage is the same. Nothing has changed on that aspect. We have eliminated windows that we had previously on the south side and on the east side as well, for accounting for future expansions. So There you can see in the east elevation, there are no more windows, as well as the south elevation. And I apologize for the quality of the image. I'm not sure why it looks so blurry. But the main elevation remains the same, and that's the west elevation where the offices are located.
How high are the walls?
Currently, right now, it's 18 feet up to here, and I believe it goes up another 6 feet or so to the top of the ridge of the metal, prefabricated metal roof. Again, the program remains the same. It hasn't changed square footage. Cost estimate, we have rearranged some numbers. We left the storm drainage in there, which will be funded by the city, will be performed by the contractor, but it will be funded by the city. And Mr. Cervantes can maybe explain it better than I can. We have removed the gate, so you can see the cost came down. I believe it was at 1.7 and change from last month, and we were able to reduce it to 1.6. And we also, during the last meeting last week, we came to a consensus that we wouldn't need a generator for this phase of the project, and that saved us quite a bit of money. So I went ahead and included what would be PBK fee, which under our umbrella is civil engineer, MEP engineers, and structure engineer and landscape and irrigation
At 8%?
at 8%.
Didn't we reduce that
That's what's
on the contract?
on the contract, ma'am, yes.
Then what did we reduce to 6? We did something down to 6.
That would be before
I need to go over that.
Yes, before my time.
And you have the current contract,
I'm sorry?
and that's based on the current contract. We need to look at that
That's
contract.
correct.
Because I don't remember the.
It's usually lower.
It is lower.
But since we have civil under our contract, which is not common, we have to account for that. Usually MEP is under us as well as structural and landscape. Usually civil, it's hired by the owner, by the client.
Contract. I have a question about that percent.
Not a problem. And so we have, before IT and AV was under the project budget, and now we have allocated as city IT department costs for the equipment and the audio video equipment and wiring, and as well as water distribution, sanitary and sewer, also as part of the city utility department.
Okay, so when you say that you had it under your estimates, the decision to release it from that was what? I mean, why are we doing it? Why wasn't it included or what?
We feel that if the city takes that part, we feel that we can save money by doing it ourselves in-house. And this is the reason why we brought
So
it.
when we say IT equipment estimate 180, that's something that you came up with?
No, that's something that the city came up with, Mr. I believe. That's right there. That's what was provided.
Okay,
From
and you
him.
came up with how much when you did it?
No, I didn't do it.
You never did it?
I
You never
did it.
included it?
No.
I got you. So what were you proposing so what was PBK proposing for technology?
I believe, well, for technology, well, for IT and AV, we had it estimated. That's the figure that we have estimated. But this is more detailed. If you look at his list, it goes into phone system, wireless access points, and Microsoft licenses. We wouldn't go that far. I'm not sure why this. 118. But this is more the equipment itself, and this is more infrastructure, wiring and.
So the monthly utility expense, you're still saying that that's the going rate?
That's what we average, without knowing what's current, the expenses, the monthly expenses for water and sewer. This is what we feel comfortable that could be your expenses, your monthly expenses.
So, Mr. Garza, that's something that, you all provided as far as what we currently undertake with what we have, and as we're planning the budget, depending on the finished date of this, that's something that has to be taken account
Yes,
as you're planning the budget,
we're gonna have to budget for that.
or, because that's new, that's in addition to the existing.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And this is our revised schedule based on our last meeting last week. We're looking at a 50% construction, and we will have we'll meet and go over our progress at that point, and again at 95%, and then we'll issue the drawings at 100%. We advertise on those 2 weekends, pre-proposal, last addendum, that's more internal, deliverable, bid opening, and a couple days for your review of proposals. My understanding is that the advertisement is done by the city. Notice to proceed on September 13th, so we're looking at breaking ground in October. We estimate 7 months construction, between 7 and 9 months. That'll give us some room to negotiate with the contractor if needed be, between 7 and 9. And that's all I have.
What's your final number?
Looking at 1.6 million.
How much?
Not including our fees, obviously. That's just construction.
Right, we'll still be looking at those. So what is it that we have currently, Chief, available?
We are about 1.3, a little bit over 1.3.
1.3? So like another 400,000 is what we're looking at?
And we're praying that we're getting some more money coming in.
I'm praying with you.
So,
Let me ask you, when we will be paying accordingly as phases, correct? So basically, we're looking at the 400,000 we have. Is that something that when we enter the bid process, council, does that money have to be totally available at that time, or?
Generally, it's supposed to, but,
Okay.
I mean, if you all think it's, I know the city will come up with.
No, we will have to, but I'm just saying if, between the time that anything else might surface and us having to go out and identify actual construction monies that we have to provide, what do you?
Whenever a contract is entered into, it's supposed to be funded. If we're below, we run into some issues, but that's where we need to figure out.
So we need to do this, yeah, this other, when we talked about the refinancing monies, then we can identify them during that process. Okay,
The releases, that one's gonna release,
1.4.
but some of it was for some other departments, I think.
1.4 and 400, so 1.8 plus the additional 600, we're at about 2.5, more or less. That would work? Okay. All right, any questions? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chief. Under public hearing A, hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance in the first reading for a conditional use permit to operate 2 portable food concession stands at a property legally described as Lot 2 San Miguel subdivision located northwest corner of Monica Street and Raul Longoria, as requested by Benedad Gonzalez. Mr. Cervantes.
Yes, Mayor, City, good evening. Mr. Gonzalez is applying for a conditional use permit to operate 2 portable food concession stands at a property located at the northwest corner of Monica Street and Raul Longoria Road. He is proposing to set up the stands in the front portion of the property, close to Raul Longoria Road, between the road and an existing home. Mr. Gonzalez is proposing to construct 4 parking spaces for the customers and to allow the use of the home's restrooms for the employees and the customers. The proposed days and hours of operation are every day from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. The property owner, who is not the applicant, has plans to build a commercial plaza in the property in the future, but is hoping to obtain some rental income in the meantime from Mr. Gonzalez. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on June 16 and recommended approval unanimously, subject to the list of conditions that are listed in your packet.
I'd like to go ahead and open this public hearing at 6:48. Are there any comments from the public for or against? Any comments from the public for or against? Bless you. From the commission? He is proposing using the home restrooms for the employees and customers. Is it ADA compliant?
No, it's not.
So then what do you do?
Approved in the past similar requests with
At a
not-
home,
with-
does he know the liability he takes on? Do you explain these things to him, or what?
Is something for the applicant to consider.
Legal? Yeah, but are we,
Unless we have an ordinance that everything must be ADA compliant.
Any new building is required ADA compliance, but this is an existing home.
because I know we required that of other builds. Any other questions? Any other comments? I'd like to go ahead and close this public hearing at 6:49. Is there a motion for approval as presented? Okay, there is no motion, and then is there a motion to deny? I move that we deny. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, what is that vote? Can you raise your hand, please, to deny?
Oh, to deny, no.
Okay, so a motion is denied. All right. Under B, consider adoption of an ordinance in first reading updating the City of San Juan Code of Ordinance prohibiting the use of properties for business and parking if not properly paved. Mr. Cervantes or Mr. Arjona?
Yes, Mayor, on this particular item, the last meeting that we had, it was tabled. One of the things that we missed was what I wanted to do was ask for an extension and bring it back before the commission so that we can research and find something and get together with Mr. Legal Counsel and go over the ordinance. So if I may ask for an extension on this item so that we can bring it back at a later date.
There no action? We
No
have
action.
no action? Leave it, okay, leave it tabled. We haven't opened it up anyway. All right. We'll do as recommended. Under contractual resolutions, A, consider authorizing the chief of police to donate a 2007 Dodge Charger to the city of Escobares, Texas. Mr. Chief Gonzalez.
Yes, Mayor. This is a vehicle that's been already brought before the commission as a surplus vehicle, been designated as that. I received a request from the chief of police and the mayor that any additional help for them. They're a population of 3,000 in Escobares, which is by west of Rio Grande City. This is a vehicle that was purchased through asset forfeiture funds and can only be used by law enforcement. It's a vehicle that needs maintenance in it, and they're going to handle all the maintenance, and they're going to provide all that. And we're just trying to, we have a really good working relationship with the law enforcement agency in Stark County, and this is a small agency that's been in existence for a couple of years. They have eight officers on the force, and when they heard about our vehicles being surplus, they came and asked us if we wanted to donate a vehicle to them. So this is something that is allowable through asset forfeiture program to transfer assets between departments for police department use. So I'm asking the commission if this is allowed.
Chief,
Yes.
is this the only vehicle you have, or?
No, we do have a lot of vehicles. The other vehicles are going to be auctioned off.
Okay.
So that's the other thing that we do with this type of vehicles that's seized. Just to report also as well, we had an auction this Saturday, and the department made about $47,000 for that. That goes to the department, for the new department for furniture. So
Excellent.
that's, of course, we're going to have to give a percentage to the district attorney's office because they allow us to do that, so. But it's trying to, but this vehicle is over 9 years old, over 120,000 miles. There was a reason that we put it in surplus, but they're going to rebuild it, refurbish it, and put it to use.
Very good.
So they're just asking for one?
Yes, they're just asking for one. At this point, yes.
Okay.
Very good. Any questions? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion
Thank
passes.
you, Mayor.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Chief. Consent agenda, monthly collection report, May 31st, 2016. Approval of minutes, June 8th, 2016. Special call meeting, June 14th, 2016. Do any need to be pulled out? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 6:53.